If we're talking about jobs for the future and providing for the future, we need to be looking at how we're training, what we have an education system, it's from the 1950s. How is that serving anybody?
Cut it out. I'm asking, why do you need it? Why do you need the profit?
So interestingly, you're talking about financial profit, because that's what, when we, generally speaking, when we talk about profit, that's what we consider that we're talking about. We're talking about money.
Yes.
When I talk about profit, I'm also talking about that increased social value that we create, the environmental value that we create, the community value, the community profit. How does the community benefit? How does the planet benefit? How do people benefit? It's a different kind of profit.
Oh, I agree with you. They were talking the same language, but that's not what we do in business. The profit that we talk about in business is not the one that you're talking about. I'm an accountant. It isn't that one.
Traditional businesses, and what I'm arguing is that what we need and what we're seeing the rise of are these non-traditional kind of businesses, these new business models that are focusing on environmental profit, that are focusing on social profit, that are focusing on community profit. How can we create as much value as possible that benefits and fulfills the needs of people and planet, the environment, the communities that we live in? And that's what
I agree with you, but that's not the profit that we use, and that's not the profit and therefore the system that we have, which is capitalism, is using a meaningless number. So I think we're agreeing about what we're trying to achieve, but you don't need one measure. It's too simplistic. You need that our kids are engaged and love their job, love their work, that the planet is thriving. That is not the profit. I think we are aligned, but but I want to say it's a different measure, a different set of measures that we're talking about.
Again,
But I'm completely agreeing that everything has to be designed in such a way that we meet people's needs. And we meet people's needs without creating a welfare state where people are not actually delivering meaningful contribution. They're actually on the receiving end. They effectively become slaves where they're not working, and it's to me it's dehumanizing. Yeah. So I think that where we were disagreeing was a definition of profit. If we start to define profit, which is not by the way what B Corp does, which is not, by the way, what anybody's doing. The ESG is not about what we're talking about. We've now moved, almost aligned in building organizations that allow people to thrive and allow nature to thrive. And I think where I'm getting to is that that's not the profit number. It's got to be something much, much clearer, much more transparent. Do you agree that nobody, I mean, if you're not an accountant, do you really understand the P&L?
Completely. And I think it's also looking at the fact that we need a complete transformation of the way that we work, of our society, of those structures. We need a complete transformation, be that digital transformation, social transformation, environmental transformation. Where I see, though, that some of the models that we currently have, to get to where we want to be, we have to transition. And I believe we need those structures like B Corp that are redefining business in the traditional sense, because we need to take a number of steps in order to get to where we need to be, where we're completely fulfilling the needs of people and planet and communities. That is a process. The transformation is a process, and I believe some of these structures, these different kinds of structures, are needed in order to get us there. I see them as stepping stones on a roadmap to achieve not just full employment, but for example, we do measure happiness. There is something called the happiness index. We do measure happiness, but there's questions about how that's calculated and what is that meaningful and what does that mean, and it's too complicated. And many of these systems are way too complicated. They need to be more transparent. So we do need something that's clear and simple and human-shaped. Again, but in order to get there, there is a process, and there is a whole shift in behaviour change that needs to happen on a huge scale.
But that's where I do disagree. I think the B Corp concept doesn't help. It doesn't help because it doesn't make it clear to people that there is only one purpose, which is looking after people and planet. It says that you can be dualist. It's projecting a different image. It's saying you can have two purposes. You can't. And therefore, it's just confusing. And if your end game, I think, which is we're both agreeing in the end game, which is we need to look after each other and we need to look after the planet, then go there. Don't create measures which are halfway houses, which don't achieve it. So you move from a P&L which is not focused on, because the trouble is, and the B Corp is still using profit, and profit is still as meaningless as it ever was. And you've still got accountants dressing up the numbers, and you've still got all kinds of reports that are meaningless. It's not helping. It's not helping. I'm not saying that the objective, if you look at the people that set up the B Corp movement, they were very ambitious. But I think there's general recognition that it hasn't taken off in the way that they envisaged, and it hasn't achieved what's required. It hasn't achieved the transformation. It's been around for how many years? I don't know. Is it 10, 15 years? I'm not sure. Yeah, and it hasn't achieved the change. So I rest my case. It's not B Corp.
So, okay. So how do we go about getting this transparency then? Because B Corp, we could say, has gone a certain way. There's been this shift that we've seen. So how do we get this whole transparency around the measures that you're talking about? How do we get there?
Okay, so it's about simply determining what we need to measure, and the happiness index, I completely agree with you, Benita, is any of these algorithms, any algorithm. I was talking yesterday to a guy who wanted to set up a business that measured the creditworthiness using ESG stuff. And I tried, and it was going to be an algorithm. I said, look, no one understands algorithms. They're not people. They're computers running. Admittedly, there are all kinds of sophisticated techniques, but they're computers still, the machines. And therefore, we fundamentally have to have measures that are simple, that everybody understands. And the same as I told you, the girl last night who said, nobody's focusing on net zero because no one understands net zero. It's too complicated. So, one, what do I need? Well, I need food. Yeah, I need food. Am I getting the food that I need? I need healthy food. I need not too much food as well, says somebody who eats too much, certainly in the evening. No, it's very simple things. Are we educating people? And we're not, because you look at the life expectations between areas, there's massive health inequalities. You can have people living 10 miles apart with a life expectancy in area 1 could be 75, and 10 miles away it could be 60 or 65. Now that is murder. Are we straight with that? It's murder when we create a society which allows these differences. So we have to start to work out, okay, what are healthy foods? So we have to measure what people are eating, then they're getting all that, then we have to measure the work they're doing. So in each area, we have to look at what the need is, food for people, and start to use language, a single language that everybody understands. But that's critical. You agree with that, by the way? It's got to be something that everyone understands in order to have.
I do agree, but I guess, I believe that, if you're living in a low-income community and the fundamental issue is around access to resources. It's access to resources, it's access to education, it's access to opportunity, it's access to inspiration. I mean, there are all those kinds of factors. And so for me, this is not just about what we're measuring and how we're measuring it, but this is about providing those fundamentals. And, there's something like £3.5 trillion worth of idle resources in the world. The fact is that, we waste billions and billions of tons of food every single year. We have enough food in this world to feed the global population 10 times over, yet we have poverty and we have starvation, and we have huge amounts of food poverty. Even here in the UK, something like 4 million children suffering from food poverty, completely disgraceful. And why is that? Because of the way that we're not using the resources that we have.
Yes.
And those resources need to be more efficiently used, but we also need to have that access to those resources. We talked about this whole notion of levelling up, but the fact remains that for me, this is not just about an exercise in what we're measuring and how we're measuring it. We have a huge education problem, we have a huge skills problem, and that to me is what we need to be looking at. Looking to the future. There are, currently, 14 million jobs in energy, for example, that cannot be filled. Those roles cannot be filled because we don't have the skills that are required. The green skills gap is phenomenal. Creative skills, innovation skills, cognitive skills in terms of problem solving. Those are the sorts of things that we need. You know, we have millions of people who are in work and who feel that they don't, 1 in 6 people in work, workers feel they don't have the necessary training required to deliver what they need to deliver. That is a big problem. And we need to look at that. If we're talking about jobs for the future and providing for the future, we need to be looking at how we're training, what we have an education system, it's from the 1950s. How is that serving anybody? So I just believe that it's very easy, I think, for us to get caught up in this whole idea of measurement and what we're measuring and how we're measuring it. But we kind of need to take a step back and say, look, we're not even training people. We're not even providing and enabling the skills that are out there. We can't even fill the jobs that are out there. You know, out of every 10 green jobs that are currently advertised, only 3 are filled. 3 out of 10. That's 7 out of 10 jobs, because we've got this huge skills gap. Yet we have people who don't have employment, who can't feed their families. So, you know, the system doesn't work. It is fundamentally flawed. But we've got to look at education, and we've got to look at skills training.
Crucial. It's been a really, really interesting discussion. Yes, we of course have had the overall topic of employment, but it's been great because we've actually had quite a few other things and elements coming in, which has been really good. So thank you so much for joining us for this discussion.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Do remember to hit the subscribe button, very important, and hopefully we'll get those views up next time we see you as well. Until that next time, take care. Goodbye.